I remember the story of Justina and the horror that her parents went through when she was essentially incarcerated by a children's hospital in Massachusetts. And this is also the subject of an episode of Michelle Malkin Investigates, friend of mine over at CRTV, and I'm friends with all the people on CRTV. Joining me now on the program is her mother, Dana Gottesfeld. How you doing?
Hi, Andrew. Good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
How's it going?
Good, thank you. Let me just say I'm
sorry.
not,
You're the wife of Mark. I mean, my mistake.
No problem.
I remember this story. It was about 4 years ago, and Justina went to Boston Children's Hospital with a complaint of feeling ill. Back me up, and how did it get to the point where they essentially locked her up?
Yeah. Well, Justina was seeing a doctor at Tufts, who she'd been with for years, for her mitochondrial disease. He referred her to a specialist at Boston Children's Hospital, and she took an emergency vehicle to see this specialist. And when she got there, the hospital said, "You actually can't see him, and you're not allowed to get a second opinion. You can't go back to your original doctor." And they locked her in a psych ward. It turns out that the
Stop. So she went for a medical issue, not a mental issue, right? This is not addiction. She was not remanded for treatment. She was not acting psychotic in public or in school. She went for a medical issue, and the Children's Hospital decided to declare her mentally unfit to leave. I mean, what was the reasoning behind this?
Yeah, I mean, it was a cellular issue. Like, the mitochondria in her cells were underperforming. It seems that the hospital worked with Child Protective Services to take custody. They filed false reports of Munchausen by proxy, and then once they got her away from her parents, they dropped those allegations against her parents, and they put her in a psych ward for 13 months. It's not totally clear why, but what is clear is that she's not the only kid that they've done this same thing to, and some of the kids actually end up dying.
Okay, so how did your husband get involved in this?
Marty has been fighting institutional abuse of children since before we heard of Justina, but we live in Boston, and when we heard Boston Children's Hospital, the #1 pediatric hospital in the country, was treating Justina like this, we researched it, and he felt like it was a life or death issue, and someone needed to take action before she died. And like we saw with Charlie, sometimes timing is everything.
So essentially, he hacked their system.
What they're claiming is a DDoS, and that's a distributed denial of service, where there's too much internet traffic going to a website, so then it becomes inaccessible. But there was none of the traditional hallmarks like ransomware or getting into any systems or anything like that. It's like showing up to McDonald's with 100 people. It's disruptive, but there's no harm.
But how did I'm reading here that Marty has been himself arrested for being involved in hacking, correct?
Yeah, it's called the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. It was a internet law passed in the 1980s. So it's very wide ranging and can be used for all kinds of anything involving a computer.
So let me get this straight. The judge allegedly has deep ties to the hospital staff because it's Harvard and it's Boston, and now Marty's in jail. Did he know? Because you remember, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Skulls, which takes place at Yale, but when you look at some of the people that have come out of Harvard or Yale, there is a deep connection there politically. I mean, the alumni is its own community within government in many cases. Is that why Marty's in jail?
I think you hit on a great point. Almost everybody in this U.S. Attorney's office is a Harvard alumni. His judge, who denied him bail, used to work at Harvard Medical School and is married to a current professor there. And it just seems right that she should have recused herself. She's also an emeritus board member of the Boston Foundation. That's one of the organizations listed on the search warrant. And they cut checks to Wayside Youth and Family Network, which is one of the places that was mentioned as abusing Justina. I'm
not getting this, because this does very much sound like the plot of a movie, right? Why would the Boston Children's Hospital want to incarcerate a girl seeking medical treatment? Was it that they were protecting their racket? They didn't want her going back to her doctor in Hartford, Connecticut? I mean, why do this? Especially when this is Boston, this is supposed to be an elite hospital. Why would they do this if it was going to have a negative consequence to Justina?
I'm no expert on this, but what we found is a phenomenon called medical kidnap. And that's when a hospital takes custody away from parents and keeps the kid. Justina's family, after Justina was released, tried to pass something called Justina's Law, and that would say kids that are wards of the state cannot be subjected to experimentation or without any potential benefit to them. I think that Justina has a rare disease, and one of the doctors who diagnosed her was studying mitochondrial disease. Her name is Dr. Simona Bajorno, and she's a PhD. It's not totally clear why or how this is allowed to happen, but the fact is that it is happening, and not everybody makes it out alive. I've been speaking with parents.
Here's something I don't understand. I mean, we had a story here in New York. It was a few years ago, and it was about these two people that were like inside some kind of cult where they only ate vegan food, and they didn't, they essentially malnourished their child to death, feeding the child only like nuts and berries or something. It was a new baby, like a newborn baby.
Okay.
It would be one thing if you were dealing with something where the parents are themselves starving a child, causing a negative medical outcome under the claim of religious freedom or something like that. But this is not that. This was a 15-year-old who's coherent, able to speak, who had medical records concerning her condition, and I mean, I don't understand how they were able to justify this in any way, shape, or form.
No, I don't think that they were. Not only that, but they also put a gag order on her family that they weren't allowed to talk about what was happening to Justina when the media became involved. Now, I don't know what kind of case would need a gag order, but I can tell you, especially in a circumstance like this, it's nothing good. It can't lead anywhere good. I think it's a lot of unchecked power. And then when you have the government, when you have all these Harvard alums stacking the U.S. Attorney's Office, willing to go to bat for the hospital and jump on an internet outage as opposed to all the child abuse going on at Boston Children's Hospital, I think we see a lot of corruption. Like
So what are Marty's lawyers telling you at this point?
Marty's lawyers are telling us that the government is motioning to block Justina from even being mentioned at trial. That they don't even want her to come up. They don't want to allow her to testify. This is a losing case for them, and I think they know it. Like, this is a terrible narrative. They have all these this DOJ is stacked with Obama holdovers, and you can see it. You can see the lack of investigation into the hospital and making Marty wait 5 months for a bail hearing just to deny him, which in the meantime takes away his ability to even appeal a bail finding from this magistrate that used to work at the hospital and is married to a professor there. It just reeks all over. Howie Carr refers to the U.S. attorney here as Swamp Thing Weinreb.
I'm looking at a more recent picture of Justina in a wheelchair. Have you and your attorneys been in contact with her parents, or is their plan to just kind of lay low?
Justina's family, along with I think like 5 or 6 others, are currently suing Boston Children's Hospital, all of them for similar treatment. Justina was not an anomaly. She was just the highest profile, but this is commonplace. This is par and parcel for the way they treat children. They find them and bring them into the psych ward. I think it's kind of like a business. They need to keep it full. I know.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I'm also looking at the website FreeMartyG.com. And it takes you to a link that this hospital has been accused by many of basically creating a business out of this, that when the opportunity arises for them to say, well, no, this person can't leave, they have psychological issues, that children have been, as Justina was, literally incarcerated by a hospital. And they do this with the backing of the government.
Yeah. I mean, at the detention hearing for Marty, his lawyer asked the FBI agent on the stand, "Are you familiar with the allegations against Boston Children's Hospital?" And the FBI agent said yes. And he said, "Are you going to do any investigation into it?" And they said no. They wear it on their sleeve. We actually, before really early on, we went to the FBI. We believed that they would do something to help all these kids that were being hurt, and they just dismissed us without even giving us the time of day. But so basically, Marty is accused or is alleged to have taken a stand as a private citizen to defense of another. Like Justina was already maimed, she was damaged, she's in a wheelchair, and who knows if she was saved even one day earlier, if her condition would be better. In America, we get to defend another, and defense of another isn't a crime. You're even allowed to use physical force, but in this case, nobody was hurt. Justina was freed, and we're told that the reason that she was freed earlier that Marty's alleged actions had an impact that got her freed earlier. And, after I'm hearing about Charlie Gard, and that if he would have been freed when his parents first made a hullabaloo about it, like he could have gotten the treatment he needed.
Well, I'm coming up on the top of my hour. Michelle Malkin is aces at this, okay? And when it comes to exposing people like this, there's nobody better than Michelle Malkin. So you're in good hands. I got to hand it over to Sean Hannity and end the program here. Thanks for joining us. We're right there wrong at the end of the story. Sirius XM Patriot.